Welcome to Folio, an actual play podcast about solo and epistolary TTRPGs. I'm your host, Satah, and I'm showcasing multiple possible experiences of self-paced games by inviting guests to play them alongside me so I can compile our stories together. You can support the show financially at patreon.com/foliopod or with a one-off donation at ko-fi.com/foliopod. This is episode 4 of our games of Farsickness Landing, a one-page map-making game about rediscovering an ancient derelict ship by Lonely Cryptid Media. The other explorers of crash sites and history joining me today are Dora Rogers, whose work you can find at dcity.itch.io and galpalgames.itch.io, and Marc Majcher, whose work you can find at majcher.com and majcher.itch.io. Dee also did some consultation and playtesting for Hocus Pocus Hyperfocus, a storytelling game about magic and ADHD, which is crowdfunding now and throughout most of October. My cat is trying to open a bag of chips. One moment. Hocus Pocus Hyperfocus was designed by the fantastic Allison Cole and Brandy Wright and has these adorable illustrations from Tiny Witch Co. The day this episode releases, it's about 80% funded. Go help push it over the finish line, and then also check out kickstarterunited.org to find ways you can act in solidarity with the workers who make such campaigns possible. That was Gerald shouting in solidarity. Gerald loves labor. Right, buddy? Briefly, also, thank you to the people who reached out to celebrate and commiserate after hearing my somewhat neurotic approach to acknowledging the 50th episode last week. Thank you for being part of the little group of creatives and game dorks who are on this experimental ride with me. I really appreciate it. Being behind on editing is unnerving, but the 1-day delay at the moment means that this episode is coming out on the 1-year anniversary of the first episode. And that is really cool. Isn't that a weird thing about how calendars work? That it's like the show always released on Fridays, but because I'm releasing it on a Saturday, I'm releasing it on the same day as a Friday. Is that interesting? I know it is interesting. The rooms 9, 10, and 11, which is what we're going to hear this week, and then next week we're going to wrap it up with our last 2 rooms. I used making my characters take a break to, I used that to remind me to do the same thing. Is this bleed? Is this what they mean when they say bleed?
Section 9. This is another hexagonal area on the untouched or less touched side of the ship. Sticking out further.
Let's find room 9. The room type is cavernous.
Destroyed.
Technical.
The room modifier is scientific.
Oops. No, it's on the floor.
Powerful.
I will respect the role. Occupied.
The item is a weapon. First time we've seen that.
Relic.
Book.
And the vibe is uplifting.
Mysterious.
Peaceful.
Interesting.
I think that this is, this was the galley, the kitchen. And the thing is that it is so thoroughly trashed that she just has no idea, right? It's kind of blank. I think that there was like, something blew up here. Maybe not even to do with the fighting or anything like that, but there was, there were relatively volatile things in here because you have to generate a bunch of heat to cook things. So something sort of like blew up here, and there's really not much left. What do your senses tell you about this? It's very simple. Her senses tell her that this room was just destroyed in a way that nothing else she's seen so far has been. Like, this was trashed before the crash. And I think she actually draws a false conclusion here. I don't think that what happened here was the result of violence per se. It was the result of, like, neglect and everything going crazy. This may have even happened after the ship was abandoned. And, something went wrong, right? Like, something shorted when it wasn't supposed to, whatever. So she actually kind of draws the wrong conclusion, and to her this is just another sign of the violence that went on here. She assumes that, like, she can't think of what it might have been. Maybe it was like an armory, right? Or maybe there was a firefight here. These are incorrect interpretations, but she doesn't know that.
Cavernous. Ooh. Okay. Yeah. So, this room was not built cavernous. This is a room with the exact footprint of the lab. The third room, the first lab that we walked into. But the hull has been opened into like the cave system, into a cave system or something that like is underground. Essentially, this ship, it seems like, was somehow already underground. Maybe it got trapped under a landslide or something. I'm not sure. And they broke through the hull to like create a living situation in the caverns beyond it. So this doesn't answer where they were sleeping when they were traveling on the ship, but I think this is uplifting and cool because this is the first place they settled. Like when the ship landed here or crashed here for whatever reason, whatever happened, they didn't go far. They just nestled the ship underground, broke through one of the walls to start living in the cave system here. And that's awesome. This is the first place that our ancestors lived on this planet. Hell yeah. I think what's scientific about it is just various systems. Like they lived here long enough that they were clearly setting up like irrigation systems and a little farm and just various, like they were really maybe even like power, like a small power grid and that kind of thing. They were building a little society here. And I think I'll bring the item in, the weapon that I rolled, as an explanation as to why they didn't live here anymore. I think there's just the obvious remnants of a huge fight with, I think, creatures that are known to us. Like there's a reason that we haven't discovered this stuff before, and that we're even doing a dig here is a big deal. I think there's just these this big fucking cave creatures, and they'll getcha. They will straight up getcha. They're very dangerous. And maybe they migrate, but on a really long time scale. Like it's every like few hundred years or something. I don't know. Or they don't go to a whole different area, but they go deeper or something. Maybe it's like, oh my God, maybe they're like cicadas. Yes, but huge and fucked up with big teeth and a little reptilian. But they lay dormant for a very long time. And then until very recently, it was unpredictable to us when they would emerge and just start doing violence. But I think we had some sort of breakthrough where we realized that it's like, you know, there's a sun near us and then there's a couple of moons. And when they are in alignment in a certain way, I think that I'm tying it together a little bit, very loosely thematically with the thing of like, you know, the plant trapping radiation. I think that it's the kind of thing where like, it's imperceptible to us, but to these creatures, when there are certain cosmic bodies in alignment, this wakes them up and they just start tearing shit apart if they find it. And I think we needed to test this for a long time. This took like decades and decades of tracking to like prove this, because it just, oh boy, wasn't worth the risk if we were wrong. And so over the course of like decades or maybe even hundreds of years, several generations of scientists tracked this and proved this to be true. And we are now so confident in it that we're like, yeah, we can start digging around in the caves now, because we know when they won't be here. And that's why we're discovering this for the first time, because it just became accessible to us. But this was not known to our ancestors. They didn't even know that these creatures would be here. They probably weren't for quite a while. Like they got enough time, they were given enough time to start to really build infrastructure in these caves. Again, I rolled cavernous for the room type. It's huge. They were building a civilization in this whole system of caves, and they did quite a bit of it. And then those creatures woke up. Those cosmic bodies aligned, and the bloodshed began probably almost immediately. And so we see the evidence of that. We see the discarded weapons, probably still the bloodstains. I don't think there are bodies. I was thinking through that for a moment. I was trying to think, like, was it so scary and unpredictable that they left the bodies here? Well, the creatures probably ate the bodies. So never mind. Yeah. I do think that what I've established so far is that they are the type who would probably come in to try and reclaim the bodies to dispose of them properly, despite the threat. But I think that they didn't have the opportunity to, because I think they got eaten. Yeah. So retroactively, I think that probably one of the reasons a bunch of the ways to get up to the second floor were destroyed was to stop them from getting into the ship, and I don't know. Or maybe they did, actually. I think, yeah, that's maybe what a bunch of the destruction in the main dome is, that a bunch of these creatures did get in and just fucked stuff up, just threw stuff around. They're a menace. And very logically, this happening once was enough for our ancestors to go, okay, let's go find somewhere else to live instead. Probably. That's probably what turned them out into the world.
Clearly, this is the computer core. Right. This is the computer core. What was the name of the ship's computer? The name of the ship's computer was solid, right? All caps. What does it stand for? Ship operating something D. Solid was the ship's computer core AI, keeping everything going. And powerful book, peaceful, yeah. Also, the ship's repository of knowledge, not physical actual books, but if it's digital, maybe copies were taken and the originals were left here. Imagine the colony ship was intended to be kind of like the hub of the first city or whatever, and because of the damage, it wasn't so. Copies were taken, but what's here is here. And although 10,000 years, again, a long time, knowledge changes. So maybe what we know now, is developed on all of that, copies of copies of copies and evolution of knowledge. It'll be interesting to cross-reference the original sources here. I think the minimal power keeping things going here is not enough for the full solid experience. And so I think part of the excavation and restoration project is getting power down here, running conduit, and try to get solid back online to kind of find out more about what happened. What do my senses tell me about this? I mean, it's quiet. This is another one of those kind of domey kind of structures. I'm seeing kind of like a central area in the middle surrounded by like walls of like white machines with blinking lights. And for some reason, it feels like it's insulated from the rest of the ship. So where there might have been whatever kind of noise, you go in here and it is eerily quiet. You can kind of get lost a little bit just sitting there. Yeah. What is safe here? I think this is probably the safest place on the ship. I think clearly more than even the people who were brought here, the knowledge that's in this core module is probably the most valuable thing. So even if nobody made it, somebody in the future could find this and our society would continue. And 1, 2, 3, 4, how does this relate to past, present, or future? This is our past. This is the direct line we have to the society that sent us here.
The 10th room.
Section 10.
I'm rolling badly, like physically, like my dice are getting trapped and hitting things. Oh God, and I'm throwing them. Hello?
5, 1, 4, 3. It's cramped.
Cavernous.
Yet again, cavernous. The modifier is alive.
Occupied.
Powerful.
The item is a trinket.
Trinket.
We've got communicators.
And the vibe is uplifting.
And melancholy again.
And mysterious. There's a lot of mystery here.
We haven't had any mysterious yet, have we? Huh.
Do we want to swap any of those? Yeah. So I'm going to swap the 1, which gave me cavernous. I haven't had book from the item list yet. So I'm going to swap with the 3 from item. And so the room type is technical. So my room is technical, alive, there's a book, the vibe is uplifting. Great. Yeah. Okay. I do have to mention the playthrough that I did on the live stream. There's a VOD on YouTube or edited audio-only version on the bonus feed, which you can get for any level of supporting the Patreon, including not supporting it financially at all, for free as a member, free member, bonus feed. It's on there. It's really good. It's a really good episode. Books played a very important role in that narrative. They were sort of the central thing that everything rotated around, if I recall correctly.
Zigzagging back down the ship. We're back on the port side. This is the back half of the ship that's kind of tilted down. It's a little bit more wrecked, but still okay. It's still okay.
So she bypasses, or she doesn't go into the kitchen yet, or the dining area, rather, yet. She goes into engineering.
This was the engineering section, the reactor, the propulsion center.
Which is probably the second most cavernous space on the ship.
It's cramped again because the walls are crushed in. There's been cave-ins, and this is where the power is coming from. This is like the little fusion core.
I mean, I think this is the fusion reactor, for one thing, that powered the whole ship.
That's still trickling out minimal power. It knows it has been damaged. It knows it has been running for a long time, and it's got to keep itself going on minimal power to keep going at all.
And it is occupied in the sense that it is full of big machines. Like, she walks in and she's like, this is wow, like, what are all of these things, right? Because there's whole other systems here, right? Like life support systems, a ton of computers. Like this was the technical heart of the ship.
There are terminals here of whatever they look like from 10,000 years ago, but they're communicating the power status. We're at 36% power right now. It could probably last for another 5,000 or 6,000 years, but it's good that we found it when we did, because who knows? And the melancholy feeling comes from knowing that this wasn't forever, right? There is a timer on this, and we were lucky to find it when we did. If we had let it go for another 10,000 years, this would be a dead ship, 100%. What do I feel here? I feel lucky, relieved that something's still working, and that whoever did this, whoever put this mission together, you can't make anything run forever, but you can do the best that you can. And knowing that it is running, it's relief, right? That it's still going. What do my senses tell me about this? I think, it is on the wrecked side of the ship. It's not just the smell of like the little ozone, a little sharp smell. I think there is like almost like the hairs standing on end feeling. I think something is more wrong than appears here. I think this is going to need attention. Yeah, I think the senses in my gut is telling me something more is going on here. What is dangerous here and how you'll overcome it. I think the danger is that this part was wrecked. This is a delicate piece of essential equipment. It's a fusion core, and we're lucky it hasn't gone up already. It's been stable for 10,000 years and looks like it will be for a good long time. However, a messed up ship's core is a concern. And I think the danger is if we explore or poke into it uncautiously, there's going to be a lot bigger problem.
This was a buzzing place of activity. It was always hot, back in the day, because there was all of these systems working. So people would strip down to like a tank top when they came in here. And I think it's relatively intact because everything was built to be very sturdy. Obviously, you don't want anything going wrong with your fusion reactor. And I think the fusion reactor is inert. Like it whatever made it active, whatever made it dangerous is gone over the last 10,000 years. So it's just this big monolithic structure that she doesn't really understand. And she will look this up in the archives, and she'll understand what it was and be pretty amazed by that. But on this first exploration, it's just a big inert structure that interests her. She finds another trinket here. I think she's not going to take this trinket just because I think that's interesting. She just finds it. And I think that the trinket... Okay. There was a man who worked here who was married. He was married to somebody who wasn't on the crew. I think somebody who was part of the cargo, right? Somebody who was in cryosleep. And he took off his wedding ring he had a spot here where he would stash it whenever he was working, right? Because he was going into engines and machines and he didn't want to get dirty or damaged. And she finds his wedding ring because whatever happened, something happened at the end where he was not able to retrieve it. Yeah, I can almost picture like the Prestige series version of this being, we see this flashback and it's not important, right? We just see that this man, maybe an alarm's going off. Maybe they're shooting somewhere nearby, right? Something like this. And somebody's saying, like, we have to go, and hurrying him out. And he turns to grab the ring, and they are pulling him along, and he doesn't get it. And then we cut to our girl, in this ruined space, finding this little shiny thing in sort of like a little cup, and being like, wow, this is so beautiful. And not understanding it. But I think that she, for whatever reason, she decides to leave this, even where she took the wings and she took the pentagram. But this, she decides to leave, right? And I think that she will later, when she looks up what a golden ring might mean, she will like that she made that decision. It'll feel right. But right now, it's just an instinct.
So I think we carefully make our way over to, like, the cavern entrance that we were just in was over top of 3rd room, the chip lab. We're going to make our way to the room that is over top of the 5th room, which was the seed experiments lab. Technical Alive book uplifting. Okay. I think we're closing a bit of a loop here. One of the questions on the list is something like connecting to other rooms, right? How does this relate to a previous room or discovery? Yeah. So in the room below this one, we were finding those experiments, and we're not going to answer everything about it because one of the mysteries that they were left with still was like, where did these robots come from? Where did we come from? Whatever. And I don't think we're going to solve that. Even if they did, I don't think that information is here. I think it's been removed by somebody, if it existed. And I think that isn't going to be the central focus of what we figure out here. I think what we find here is some of the results of the experiments they were running on the seeds. And in part, they were doing that to be like, maybe if we figure out more about the fact that you can run on this seed stuff, we'll figure out more about you. But I think that they also realized that, like, they could make the extraction of energy from the seeds more efficient. And I think this was something that the humans specifically developed. Like, yeah, we get a little bit of a lore dump because we find... the book we find is one of the other sets of one from the missing set of notes that basically explains, like, okay, I think we do learn how the humans first met the robots, which is they're from another planet, and their power grid ran off of a similar thing to what the engines do, essentially big nuclear plants, right? But I just don't think that this is exactly nuclear radiation. It's some other thing. I don't know why that matters, except that I just think it's fun, and it also means that it can behave differently. And I have a somewhat inherited from a friend who's annoyed by bad portrayals of radiation in fiction. I feel similarly. And so I want to be able to, like, play with the fictional portrayal of radiation without actually saying that's how nuclear radiation works. Does this matter? To me, yes, very deeply. Anyway, on their home planet, they had these big power plants that were run by this specific type of radiation, and one of them had a huge accident. And I think very similarly to how we first discovered these robots, where they were like these statues just sort of dotting the horizon, I think a bunch of them just popped up around the factory, like drawn towards the radiation. And I think, like, they were almost filter feeders. They were able to they were around. And I think it was awesome for us because we were like, fuck, this is a huge meltdown. We have to contain this. And in part, it was contained by a bunch of these robots appearing. And they were able to, like, absorb a bunch of the radiation, and then they use it as energy. And I think they showed us these plants, the plants that, like, absorb the radiation. They were like, oh, you should plant a bunch of these around your factory. And so any leaks, any accidents, but even just like the discard that happens regularly in the generation of energy, these will just absorb it. And then we use the seeds to power ourselves. And I think that these notes describe the robots like crushing the seeds into a powder, basically, and like inhaling them in the same way that they could inhale the radiation out of the air. And I think that the robots have not allowed any, like they haven't allowed themselves, they're not letting any humans like dissect them or anything. Like they are not like really readily offering how we work, which I think is like fair, like a fair, they're willing to be allies, but I think they have a little bit of a distrust just with seeing like what people are doing with technology. They don't want to be tools, you know. It's robots, it seems like, but and maybe there's a long history of whatever. Oh god, fucking what was the Becky Chambers book that I read at the beginning of this year that I desperately needed to read, that I cried single beautiful tears at? Psalm for the Wild-Built. Robots being wilded, essentially. Fucking beautiful book. You should read it, especially if you have a tendency to push yourself too hard to achieve things and be #productive all the time to the detriment of your own health. You should check it out. What was I talking about? The robots don't want to become tools for the humans, and so they are resistant to a certain amount of complex technical understanding. But they will allow the humans to like this person or maybe a team of people was like, I think that we can figure out a way to break down these seeds to be used more efficiently. And so they'll last longer. And so you'll be able to like hold power for longer, just maximizing the energy extraction from them. And like, because the robots wouldn't allow themselves to be directly studied, it was a little bit more of a process of like, okay, we think that we've made something you can use. Try this. Did that do anything? No? Okay. We'll try something else. But they were happy and willing to do that. And I think they skip over, there's a little bit of a yada-yadaing over some parts that we would find helpful to not be yada-yada'd over. Like this journal/scientific note amalgamation talks about like how we met, the beginning of our relationship. And then we left. And after we left, all of this, and we're like, why did you leave? What are you talking about? Yeah, okay. And I think that they did find out how to make a more efficient like fuel from these seeds and started producing it. One of the things I rolled was alive. And so I think what's going to happen here, as we're investigating this room, we're reading these notes, somebody finds not a gas can, but essentially, right? Somebody finds, or they find the equipment that these seeds were processed through, and there is like a container attached, and it has just a few drops. It's the kind of thing you wouldn't even think of. It's the couple remaining drops of oat milk you rinse out of the container before you recycle it. And we're gonna bring it to the robot that is still sitting in that room on the main floor. The one who looked up at us and gestured, asked for something. I think that we're starting to theorize that a lot of these robots are on low power mode, essentially. Like they are conserving energy. They're very dramatically hibernating. And maybe being near this radiation leak of this one broken engine has left that one robot with enough energy to like gesture when we came in, but not much more. Gonna go give that robot some of this fuel. And it's going to wake up. And I don't know that we're going to put on screen what happens. Because our job is to keep exploring rooms. And we probably also have to like, you know, we want to do this, but we will have to get approval from a bunch of people. It has to be passed up the chain at the dig site before it can actually happen. And so it's not happening immediately. We're going to keep exploring. But that is the plan. And I can narratively say it's going to work. It's going to work, and we will be able to try and figure out how to communicate with that robot. Maybe learn some shit. That'll be great. But while we're getting permission to do that, we gotta go check out room 11.
11, this is the flip side from the power core, on the less damaged side of the ship, but we're still in the tipped down section, so still not in the best situation.
cramped, powerful, seed, peaceful.
Labyrinthian, spiritual, trinket, and melancholy.
Cavernous, occupied, relic, melancholy.
Melancholy, melancholy, melancholy.
Let me see if there's a more personally intriguing distribution of those dice.
What else is there on a ship?
All right. I have arranged my dice to give me organic, powerful, a trinket, and the vibe is unsettling. Now, I certainly have a direction that I would generally go when it comes to something that is organic and unsettling, and it is powerful in some way, and it involves meat. It involves meat batteries. Let's find a different direction to go, because that hasn't been the vibe so far.
I wonder if something has changed because this is so close to the damaged power core. This part of the ship has, again, this is the less damaged part of the ship. It's still in the broken back half of it. But I think maybe there's something different about it, where the metal and plastic of the corridors and the walls have kind of crystallized and kind of branched out, almost as if like the power leakage has catalyzed some sort of organic growth, reacted with minerals nearby and sort of meshed with the ship in a way. Whatever kind of magic science fiction radiation like caused the rock and the titanium or whatever of the ship to kind of fuse and grow together from this mechanical or maintenance or cargo area into this kind of like fractal crystal maze that leads into the surrounding strata. Why is this melancholy? I don't think there's anything like this on the surface or near, where we've seen before. And maybe it's this sort of like, we've been on this planet for 10,000 years. We are a advanced civilization. We know a lot of things. We think we're pretty great. But there's still so much, even just on this planet, that we don't understand. And this was an accident, right? This was our ship reacting with the rock around it. What else don't we know? Yeah, we kind of get lost in here thinking about it again. In a, like the, not opposite way, but like a sidelong way from the computer core room. It's another sort of meditative experience. This little crystal maze. Questions. How does this relate to a previous room or discovery? It relates to the power core, right? And maybe what powered the ship is not the same kind of stuff we use these days. And this method of generating power has maybe we have lost a lot as a society. Maybe there's, not magic, but definitely, there's definitely something lost. And that's a little bit sad. What do I feel here? I know these crystals aren't alive, maybe, probably, but there's a weird connection. There's a feeling of like the society that has grown up out of this seed ship. What we brought here has interacted with the world in a way that has produced the people exploring the ship now, us, kind of in the same way that whatever is happening to the ship and the rock here has created this new third thing. I don't know if that answers the question. What other questions do I have here? Is this okay? Is this going to spread? Is this contagious? Are we going to be affected by this? What happens if we bring some of it out? Will it stop or continue growing? What will happen if we can't figure out why this is going on? What if we can't shut down the power? This is new. This is new stuff. Lots of questions.
Organic could be what the humans were eating, like an old farm. Ooh, okay. I think for this, actually, we're going to go back underneath the dome. We found another engine room. I'll have to work my way to the trinket. But, again, powerful is the fact that this is an engine that powers the ship. But the other thing that's happening here, tying together the organic and unsettling factors, that plant that we saw growing, it's big. The stem is big, the flower is big, the seed is big. But it's conceivable as, like, essentially a flower or a bush or something, you know? The thing that is down here looks like what happens when those plants get a little out of control. There was a plant in this engine room, presumably absorbing the energy, right? Oh, and I think the way I'll tie the trinket in is that it was like in a personalized container, like somebody was growing this plant and they'd like written their, they painted the pot or something. Maybe they were doing something special with it, or it was a gift or something. Or maybe they just were getting to the point where they were having fun personalizing the pots and stuff. I don't know. But there is like a hand-painted pot in here. And the plant that's in it has wilted and died. But before it did that, it spread spores or something. Because the engine down here is completely choked by a huge, thick vine version of this plant. It's just coiling all the way through the engine. And I think it's also dead. It like just sucked all of the energy out of this engine until there was nothing left to draw, and it died. I guess we're kind of building, I'm building a little bit of a ecosystem here where the plants feed off of this radiation, and then the plants are kept in check by the robots using them as fuel. And when the robots aren't around to use them as fuel, or they aren't maintained, they can just kill the source of energy completely. And I guess, like, there's something interesting about that with, like, I mean, is this a form of energy that was created by people? Or is this the type of thing where, like, that just happens to be the most attractive energy to this type of plant? Or the thing that they grow on the best? Or could you theoretically, like, kill a sun or a star by letting these plants just choke it out? Maybe. I don't know. There's experiments to be done. But yeah, there's something so grotesque about it. It just, like, looking at this engine and just this vine is like constricted on it. It's somehow punctured through some of the metal. It just has this visceral feeling of like having choked something to death. But it is a plant that has choked out an engine, which I think often in a story that I'm telling especially would probably be a little bit of a triumph of reclamation of something industrial. But there's just a sense here that this is something that is unbalanced. This is not how it's supposed to be. Both of these things are supposed to be able to keep living, but the thing that allows that balance to be maintained was not here anymore. Is there anything else? Do I want to learn more about what happened? Like if this caused a crash or something? No, but I think that I will say in my timeline, I think that the person whose body we found in room 8 with the necklace was on guard here alone and died. Oh, yeah, and they were maintaining the ship. Like, it's hard to do single-handed, but it's small enough that one person can do a lot of the routine maintenance if they, like, just do a little bit of one thing every day on a routine, you know? And then they died. Unexpectedly, I guess. Like, not necessarily of, like, old age, not maybe naturally in that they waited here for so long. Like, maybe they died unexpectedly. And so something started to happen, like one of the engines started to melt down. And, oh, this was their plant. Yeah, this was like a personal plant that they were maintaining. And they left down here and then died unexpectedly in the time that they were away from it. They meant to come back and collect it, but they didn't. And so it ate this engine. And then I think another engine started failing, and the radiation leaking from that pulled the robots back. They'd left maybe with the humans, which I think is interesting. I wonder, like, if we'd been thinking, like, oh, I bet the robots stayed here while the humans left. But it seems like they all left together. And then a few robots got pulled back because of this radiation signal, just like they were pulled to that first power plant when they first made contact with our ancestors on their home planet. And they started maintaining things a little bit again, but I think something was just out of whack. They didn't have the ability to keep making these plants and this fuel, or at least doing it safely or something. And that's when they went into hibernation. But that robot who we have seen, that first robot that we saw in the cramped room who looked at us, came back here after that human died to keep up the watch. I'm guessing they didn't need a communicator because the robots can already talk to each other over long distances or something. Or the communicator was a backup for the chip failing, and I'm over justifying. I'm trying to say, like, it was notable that the human had a communicator with them, but the robot didn't. Doesn't actually matter. The robots have other systems of communication. It's totally fine. Yeah. Ooh, yucky. I don't know why this specific visual of this plant is genuinely chilling to me. Maybe it's just because I just rewatched Little Shop of Horrors for the billionth time, and so I'm on high alert for plant behavior. I don't know, but I like that one. I'm glad that I spooked myself. That's ideal.
Okay. She goes into the kitchen next. The dining room. Number 5. There's just a big table here. It's very utilitarian. It's sort of got, it was stainless steel. It had stainless steel chairs, or like whatever, low grade steel. And a lot of it has sort of like rusted away. It's kind of like barely recognizable for what it was. The ship itself must be made of whatever. It's made of a fancy alloy that doesn't break down. This was like cheaper, worse stuff. And it's broken down a great deal in 10,000 years. Probably actually a lot of that in the last 100 years when it got exposed to moisture and oxygen and all of that stuff. But she's able to tell, like, yeah, this was a table, I think. And I think that there's a hologram here. This is the powerful thing. There's another hologram, but it's not a hologram like any of the others she's seen so far. It is a static image, and it's the crew. And it springs to life as she walks into the room. It's a fucking snapshot, right? It's like a family portrait that they took. I think the way that it worked is that they took it in this room, and then it became a permanent fixture of this room, right? Like at some point during their journey, it just shows them where they were. They're all sort of lined up against one wall. Everybody's smiling. And this is before there was any conflict. Before the weapons came out, years before, and people look happy, and she just studies them, right? Like, I think she doesn't assume that's what it is. I think that this is a point. She stops again and she pulls out her computer. There's not explanatory text, but there's a computer that's doing this, right? Like there's some sort of computer projecting the hologram, and she is able to get her system to talk to it. And is able to figure out that this is the crew. And obviously, that's amazing, right? Like, I mean, gosh, just imagine that, actually, right? Like, think of that for a sec. So there's a famous story that I mentioned. I was a classical civs minor. There's a famous story that, like, God, where's that jackass? He was a early modern... Oh, I think I found him. He was an amateur psychologist, an early modern amateur psychologist. Excuse me, I said psychologist. I meant archaeologist. He was an early modern archaeologist. Heinrich Schliemann. Not 100% sure I'm saying that right. So he's very famous because he found Troy, he found what he believed to be the city of Troy from the Trojan War, which was a big deal, because it was considered to be completely fictional, right? And now there's some belief that it was a historical place, right? Like leaving everything else aside. There's a story that I heard from one of my professors about him who, but I should be clear, was not saying that this was like a good thing, kind of. He was one of these, early archaeologists, right? He was a very romantic figure at the time, and now we look back and are like, actually, he was very destructive in a lot of ways. He was a, real piece of work in a lot of ways, and he was very good at self-promotion. But anyway, the story is that he excavated a tomb at Mycenae, which is, it was one of the major sites of Bronze Age Greece. He excavated a tomb, and he found the human remains, and there was a funerary mask on the corpse. He took the mask off, and he just saw like a human face, right? Like just a human face that looked like it had been laid down yesterday. And then it sort of like, it was exposed to air for the first time, and it sort of dried out almost immediately, right? Like in front of him, like it became what we would think of as a mummy in front of his eyes. And then he said about that experience, "I've seen the face of Agamemnon." And like, what an ass, right? Like for a few different reasons there. But like, imagine if you could do that without being destructive, right? Like that is what our girl is experiencing now. It's like she's seen a lineup of all the heroes of the Trojan War, or she's seen like Gilgamesh or Cleopatra or Julius Caesar or any of these ancient figures just spring to life in front of her eyes, and they're real and they're there. And I think that the other thing is that she notes that they look happy. She documents this very well, by the way. She takes 90 million images of this into each of their faces. Because, like, who knows? This could all stop working in theory. And this is way too precious to have that happen. I don't know how well holograms actually photograph, but she can do it. She's got future tech. So she documents this very well. And I think that she reflects that it seems like something must have happened to these people that caused all of these weapons to be out and caused all of this destruction on the ship. And that makes her really sad because they look happy in the hologram. They look like friends.
This has been Folio, an actual play podcast about solo and epistolary TTRPGs. You can find transcripts, game statistics, and more at foliopod.site. You can help pay for hosting costs, game purchases, and maybe eventually a bit of my production labor at patreon.com/foliopod or ko-fi.com/foliopod. You can find Dora on Bluesky at Queen Regnant. She has games at dcity.itch.io and games she makes with her wife at galpalgames.itch.io. Like I said at the top, the Kickstarter for Hocus Pocus, Hyperfocus, my god, the Kickstarter for Hocus Pocus, Hyperfocus is in its first week. Go secure a copy of this cozy story game about an absent-minded witch with a very important thing to do and a lot of little distractions stealing her focus. You can find Marc at majcher.com and majcher.itch.io. You can find Satah, that's me, on Bluesky at satahchips.gaygothvibes.online and my work generally at gaygothvibes.online. Next week, Dora and Marc and I will continue our games of Farsickness Landing by Lonely Cryptid Media. Everything I mentioned here is linked in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening, and take care out there.